Well, I think we should start talking about the process of the show, like from the minute that you got invited to do the show here, and would love to hear your considerations on how you came to this idea of doing this specific piece, the painting.
Well, definitely the first trigger for the exhibition, for what you can see in the exhibition, was meeting the place first through images or through the floor plan, but also then coming almost a year ago to see it. And well, the space is really special, really has a lot of things that you start looking at and you start having ideas, no? And here in particular was really interesting, the curves in the space, this wall that is behind us, and at the end, no, how everything sort of finishes without like a clear cut, no? It kind of, it has a way of being not possible to see like a square that you see all the four corners, no? Here it's impossible to see really. You have to be standing in many points to see that, no? And
yeah, like a sense of movement somehow.
Yes, no? And kind of like when you enter, first you don't know how big the space is because you have to enter until here to see sort of this vanishing point here, and then when you're here you sort of forget how big the first space is.
So, and then you decided to use this pattern. Can you tell a little bit why this pattern and where did it came from?
Yeah, well, I mean, first when I decided I wanted to use the walls for doing a painting or a wall drawing in this case, I really wanted something that could be even like pushing this idea of movement even further, no? And so this pattern comes from a very specific reference. It's a dress from the 60s that was made with paper, and it uses a pattern from an Italian op art painting. No? I mean, one of the things that is most interesting for me about the pattern is that it really plays with the eye, no, of the spectator, and it really. There's a way to define the pattern that is very, very simple and very geometric and mathematical even, but how it reacts, how the eye reacts to it is something kind of very difficult to describe, no? So it has these two sides that are interesting, no? That it's very geometric and very simple and very basic, really, but then it has this result in the spectator that creates like even circles, no? When it's all like squares and rectangles, it starts creating kind of like a vibration and circles, and I think that was the main point of using it, no?
And also the colors highlight that. So
yes.
These gradients.
Yeah, it's at the end I think 14 colors, 14 different colors, and they go. Behind us, you see sort of the all in this corner is the full gradient going from the first to the last color, but in other parts of the exhibition, this transition happens in different rhythms, and that was also interesting to test in the space, no? How this gradient has a movement, no, and can be like. Can change the speed of the movement and what it creates, no?
Yeah, I think that's an important part too, because the show in the end, like you say, is about the idea of metamorphosis and change. So it's very clear that the entire space creates a vibration, so people get somehow embedded in this flow of change, and there's some key subjects like the insects and the transgender operation. Can you talk a little bit about the anecdotes and the narratives about the show, which is an important thing too?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that you mentioned about like how in the space with this wall painting, the idea of change is very important. I think this is how this idea plays out with the wall drawing is important because there are many places in the space where the transition is not so obvious, and some where clearly you see that there's a change of colors, no? And I liked a lot the idea that you cannot really plan what an spectator is gonna see in an exhibition, no? You can have some expectations and some guided somehow, but also there are so many things that just happen, no? And also happen individually, so you cannot plan at all, no? And this idea that any given person can see these transitions and these changes in different moments or sometimes just miss them was interesting in the case of these two examples that or these two sort of subjects that you mentioned for the exhibition, no? Because first of all, in the case of the insects, I was looking at the illustrations of a Swiss illustrator called Maria Sivila Merian, and she was mainly like a illustrator, like a botanist illustrator. So she was doing very delicate observations of the metamorphosis of insects, and on these illustrations, one of the most interesting things is that you see all the phases of the metamorphosis in one image, no? So in one image you see since like not even a cocoon, already like just the eggs of the insects, and then when it becomes a cocoon, and of course when it transitions into the butterfly, and all these stages of the evolution in one image. And I like this idea that it's really basically about observation, no? And the little changes that happen in between the phases. And here the wall drawing worked in this way, no? And also because this thing that I mentioned about in many places of the exhibition, the rhythm of the transitions happen differently. In my imagination, I'm a spectator with time to see the show and walk around, would see this, no? That there's kind of the change happening in different speeds in different places, no? So, ideally they would question why this happens, no? And if they are perceiving it correctly, or if there's, what's the rule in this change, no? And it's very similar to what this Swiss botanist was doing, no? With the insects, like really just like seeing, trying to observe, to look closely to what's in front of her, no? And happening in many days, concentrating in one image, no?
I think another interesting aspect of the show is that you departed from a story of this character, which is this Jamaican nun that lives in London. So I'd like you to talk about it, and also to explain a little bit why did you include the obituary, and how was the process, and also the relationship between this story and the dream that you had. It's in the folder of the show, and the text that you've written. So can you talk about this part of the show?
Yeah. Well, this I think it has many angles, no? This character. I think what interested me is that it's a real character. I mean, she is a nun that exists and works in London with teens that are trying to do the transition, have a transition reassignment operation, surgery, and so this exists, no? And basically everything, all the rest is fictional after just her existence, no? And I found it like a very interesting, like kind of pivotal character in a more general narrative about, not only what people like morally judge about this transition, but really, especially what different points of view can really change completely what we're talking about, no? Because in her case, I kind of like developed on this through fiction, but it's her opinion of this movement of transition between genders. It's totally justified like religiously, no? So it's totally makes sense in her own, for her truth, for her belief, no? And
it's completely counterintuitive when you're talking about the Catholic
yes,
Church,
no?
so this is very interesting.
Yes. So when you sort of hear her opinion and hear her argument, it's kind of no way to deny it has at least some possible validity, no? So I find this interesting, no? That like in these moments also where everyone is taking sides and it's very difficult to find these cases where you find out where actually like
It's not what it seems.
It's not what it seems, and also like I mean, this is maybe also the point of creating this fiction, in the sense that when you create a fiction, you also create the rules of the story, no? And this was my point in like fictionalizing this story, no? And this character, that you can really add up and subtract and bring more elements to, if it works for your story, no? And then this was the case of creating this, no? That I wanted to sort of like open even more angles of these cases, and to try to, I mean, ideally for the spectator. I know that it's kind of difficult to filter into like through an exhibition, but ideally it's like that people can open up for more possibilities, no? Of thinking about some things, no?
And this is something that it's you've been investigating in your work for a long time, no? Like this thin line between hard facts and fiction.
Yeah.
But I feel like I know in your work that this show, it's a bit more radical in that sense, you know, like in a way that we invited Oliver, which is a British journalist that is in fact the professional writer for the obituaries in The Guardian. And I think it's something that I departed from a conversation between both of you, like to use the actual form of the newspaper. So I think maybe it'd be nice to talk about this in the age of the fake news and this thin line between invented facts and things like that. So can you comment this a bit?
I mean, I think it was a super interesting conversation with Oliver, no, Bastiano, who wrote this obituary that we have here. Because of course there were many delicate points about it, no? He doing it professionally, sort of is a delicate subject to create a fake obituary of a real person, no? That he doesn't know. So it's kind of like
that is alive.
That is alive, no? So there's like many sort of lines that were crossed with that, but I think we got, I mean, to a point of like real understanding when I explained him that for me it's kind of like a sort of homage to this woman, no, to her work, and that it was not really that this idea of crossing into fiction from a real character or for a real story. I mean, the idea is not really to confuse or to produce like, it's not like, I mean, I was recently like listening to videos of people like saying, for example, where's the line in comedy, no? For example, in live comedy, and they say the line is where they start screaming in the middle of a theater, like there's a fire, no? Because this can create like a real tragedy, no? Like if people like just stomp into the walls and start dying and so. But only until then, when you put something in it's where there's that line, no, and in this case, I think it was clear that it was really not in that sense, no, not trying to, for example, to inflame like a sentiment against, for example, the church or against transgenders. I felt like it's also the way it's written and the way it's used, the character in the fiction. It's really meant not to push you into one or other direction of your convictions. It's more really just to think like, oh, really, no? Like, and I like this a lot. These moments of where you're like, oh, really? Like, you just start to think like, well, this could be possible, no?
takes you away from the
Yes.
routine somehow.
Yes. Because I mean, I feel in everything we always have to be very straight with things. No, like we have to. I mean, we have to, like for working, for living, etc. We have to be clear in things. I mean,
take part.
Yes,
take
I mean.
sides.
Yes, but in the case of art and in fiction, I think you can. I mean, you can play with this also with moving in from one side to the other and not really creating a position, but creating another reality where you don't need to take a position. You just have to accept things as they are, no? Because it's a fiction.
To drift through different angles, which
Yes, no?
is the most important thing that
Yes.
art can do.
Yes.
And in that sense, I think the show is it's pretty much about the idea of nuance in a very literal way, which is the color nuances that you apply to the show, but also this thing you were talking about that not everything is what it seems to be, and talking about these transitions also, I think, especially now in Brazil, that we are in a moment that everybody's terrified what might happen in the future. I think the show somehow gains another layer. So I want to talk to you about how do you feel this particular show in this particular space, in this context, because you spent 40 days, more than 40 days, like if you count the time in Rio, really experiencing a very crucial moment in the country. So do you think it has an impact, I don't know in the making of the show, but certainly it has in the reception of the show? So how does it feel, this context, situation?
Well, this is something that we were talking a few moments ago, in the sense of like how I mean, how really can you measure sort of the I would not say the impact, but the how open are spectators, how really open they are to what they're seeing in a show, no? And if they're interested in reading a little bit further through the exhibition, no? I don't mean like reading, but just like going deeper into the exhibition and making questions, no? But I think in general, just this idea that I mentioned about like trying not to jump into positions, no, into clear-cut divisions of you, me, and so I think, I mean, I see this in Brazilian society as I see it in Mexican society, no, that the divisions are really strong, no, between different parts of society, no. And this, I mean, I feel like, and in an exhibition, in a space like this that is in the center of a city, in a space that you can enter, like everyone can enter. No, there's not like there's not an idea of like only people who can buy something can enter. No, it's really like totally democratic. I feel, I mean, especially I'm very curious to want to see what people would feel and would see or would think. No. But me, I would think that it can give them this sort of moment of really having some new questions, no, about certain things, and for me that's already enough. Like, no, when you can enter somewhere and have a few new questions that you didn't have before, no.
A trigger for reflection.
Yes, no.
Very, I would say in a sensorial way, because the show
yes.
It has all these layers, fiction, narrative. There's this very up-to-date debate about the transgender policies and also the operation in itself. But in the end, it's like this this experience that has literally many entry points as you walk around the exhibition and look at, like, each of the works have their own narratives, and they take you to, like, their starting point for reflection in themselves.
Me also, like, I think more related to the context, no, of what was my experience, no, in Brazil or in São Paulo. I feel that many things. Sometimes you have the perception that they're in this like moment of catastrophe or of like really like an end, no, and you don't even know what's going to happen after.
Well, talking about this relationship to nature and city, I would like you to talk a little bit. How was like after spending these days in São Paulo and like working hard in the show, you went to Rio, which is a completely different situation, and also experienced Brazil, another version of Brazil. So maybe it would be nice if you could talk about this long residency process that actually started from you coming to São Paulo, folding into a show, and also there's this post-moment or conclusion maybe in Rio that might be still going on. So
I mean, I think it was impossible not to feel the impact of the museum burning in Rio, no?
Yeah.
In the sense that it happened exactly the day of our opening, no?
Yeah.
The night of our opening, and I think it changed a lot how I felt about the whole experience, no? Because it's of reality, no? That sometimes you get when you're working in art, no? Because it coincided with the end of the exhibition, the opening, and so you sort of close yourself into what you're doing, and you know, like in the details of what you're doing, and like that things happen correctly, etc. And you have to avoid thinking a little bit about what's happening outside. And exactly that night was like this strong, you know, horrible tragedy, no? And me, I was really afraid of going to Rio, no? To see this, because I mean it's really an incredible tragedy, no? So I think it was a bit marked by that, no? My time in Rio as well. Because I really wanted to see a lot of things in that museum specifically, no? And research on that and talk with some people there. And of course, it's just out of the map, no? That literally, no? So it's it was a strange feeling. But besides that, Rio, I mean, it's the first time I see something of Brazil outside of São Paulo. So it's an incredible place, no? One thing about Rio that was a great. We went to the sitio of Burle Marx, and this was really like the highlight of my time in Rio, because I knew the things that he made in cities mostly, but this work that he did there is kind of like a master work, no, in nature, and it's really incredible to be so close to that, no, in such a big city as Rio, no, because it is a big city. So it's I think to have this contrast between nature and city, there you really have it like really strong, no, and it's special.
And we are doing this interview in your last day in São Paulo. You're coming back to the show after this 10 days in Rio, so there's something to wrap the conversation that you'd like to add. This seeing the show again before you leave.
No, I'm very happy to see it again, and but mostly, like we were talking before coming here, I'm really curious to see what people see in this moment, no, in Brazil here, and what comes to their mind, no. I mean, I'm really curious about this perspective of the spectator, no.